of the cross, proclaiming the fullness of truth with clarity and charity.
Heard around the world on your Android and Apple mobile devices.
The Simple Truth, rising up to explore the difficult topics of real life. Join us as we proclaim the good, the true, and the beautiful with the simple truth of Jesus Christ and His Holy Catholic Church through Scripture, tradition, and the Catechism. And now, your host, Jim Havens.
It is great to be back with you on The Simple Truth, where we proclaim the life-giving reality of Jesus and His Catholic Church. We consecrate everything to the Sacred Heart of Jesus through the Immaculate Heart of Mary and the pure, strong heart of St. Joseph. It is Current Events Wednesday, and our guest today is Diehl Hudson. He's a Catholic husband and father, the host of Church and Culture on the Ave Maria Radio Network. He's the former editor of Crisis Magazine, former head of Catholic Outreach for the presidential campaigns of George W. Bush, as well as an advisor to his administration. He's a convert to Catholicism at age 34. And Diehl taught philosophy for about 15 years before entering the world of Catholic publishing and politics. He's an accomplished author as well. His newest book is co-authored with Matt Schlapp, and it's entitled The Desecrators, Defeating the Cancel Culture Mob and Reclaiming One Nation Under God, which is what we're going to be discussing today. It's published by Tan Books. You can get it at tanbooks.com. Diehl Hudson, coming to us from CPAC in Orlando today. Welcome to The Simple Truth. How are you?
I'm good, and I hope your audience doesn't mind that I'm sitting in the corner of my hotel room, kind of hanging from the ceiling, because I've got very poor internet. But I'm glad to be with you, Jim.
Yes, yeah. We ask the audience to pray that internet holds up. It's a great blessing to have Diehl here with us today. This book is action-packed, full of great information, and without being a dense read. Highly recommend it, even for those folks who don't like to read. So if that's you in the audience, and maybe you're familiar with this show, bring out a lot of authors, talk about a lot of books, and maybe you just rule them all out and think, well, I don't really like to read. I'm not going to ever get any of these books. This is the one to get. This is a good, quick, very informative, very important read. Again, it's called The Desecrators. You can get it at tanbooks.com. So very much looking forward to diving into this with Diehl Hudson today. But first, it's important that we always begin the Current Events Wednesday show by remembering the biggest current event of all. And that's the number one news story that ought to be reported by all the networks, but is going unreported today and every day. And that is the ongoing daily government-sanctioned, government-funded, government-protected mass murder of innocent children in the wombs of their mothers. These are real people being murdered by the thousands today and every day in our nation, which also means the mass exploitation of pregnant moms in need for profit by the lie of abortion. In terms of the loss of human life, we have at least a 9/11 every day in the U.S. Imagine 3,000 of any other category of persons being murdered in a given day in our nation, and it going unreported by the media, and even mostly ignored by the churches. Imagine if that were happening every day, and you begin to understand something of the insane reality in which we find ourselves. According to a July 2020 article in the prestigious peer-reviewed medical journal The Lancet, we have a global death toll from abortion of 73.3 million children annually, which is more than 200,000 preborn children being murdered worldwide every day. It is essential that we put great effort into breaking through our own desensitization to this massive evil. We have to face reality on this and so much more. We must live, proclaim, and push forward the vision that every innocent human being, without exception, has a right to life. Even an atheist still ought to have the basic moral sense to see the evil of killing an innocent child. For those who believe in Jesus and His Catholic Church, we have the additional benefit of crystal clear, authoritative magisterial teaching on this, which truly gives us absolutely no place to hide in treating those in the womb as any less valuable than us. The Catechism of the Catholic Church 2270, quote, Human life must be respected and protected absolutely from the moment of conception, meaning fertilization. From the first moment of his existence, a human being must be recognized as having the rights of a person, among which is the inviolable right of every innocent human being to life." End of quote. Also, if you've experienced abortion in some way, as a mother, father, sibling, grandparent, etc., there are some great people, great resources available to help you in your healing process. We love you. You are not alone. You can go to lovewillendchildkilling.com, click on the healing tab for more information. Diehl Hudson, anything jump out to you from the open that you'd like to comment on as we begin here?
Yeah, I mean, people have been asking, well, what do we mean by desecrators? And, you know, what you've just said about abortion is at the heart of the desecration. The right to life is the foundation of all morality. Without a right to life, all other moral principles are kind of just hanging in the air without any kind of foundation whatsoever. They have no fundamental principle upon which to be based. You have to begin with the right to life, as we did on our own Declaration of Independence, and certainly at the founding of our nation, we had founding fathers and we had a citizenry that believed that life was sacred and believed that life should be protected. Even the debate over slavery at the Constitutional Convention is evidence of that awareness. Most of the members of the Constitutional Convention were opposed to slavery. The only way they could actually get an agreement on a constitution is to say to the southern states, well, we'll give you slavery for the time being, but don't plan on keeping it. And so the desecrators at this point in time, and this all began, as you know, way back in the 60s and 70s, and that year 1973 sticks out, Roe versus Wade. All that we hold sacred, beginning with our "I believe in one God, maker of heaven and earth," the idea of one God, one law, one absolute, one eternal destiny for all of us, one moral law by which we were all measured. We don't measure ourselves by our own standard. We all submit to God's standard. The idea that mothers and fathers are naturally supposed to take care of the child, grow the child, educate the child. They're supposed to be there for not just the future of that child, but for the future of all children, so that society, community, civilization going forward isn't filled with just terribly traumatized people, as it has become because of the breakdown of marriage. And when you see that Black Lives Matter officially on their website, when they were established, wanted to do away with the nuclear family, just like Karl Marx, but also like Stalin and other totalitarians. If you do away with the family, then the state can raise the child, educate the child, and make the child believe, whatever he or she believes. And so the family is the core, the crucible of all Christian and really natural law values. And the basic attack here by the desecrators is on God, family, one law, one moral standard, and obviously the fact that there are only two genders.
We're talking with Diehl Hudson. He's the co-author of The Desecrators. You can get the book at tanbooks.com. Diehl, you write in the book, quote, "With the passing years, the rationale for Roe v. Wade appears more and more like the product of a vast sociological experiment, a moment in history when liberal women, aided by compliant men, declared themselves free of creation's order." End of quote. Any message to men, particularly to Catholic men, who might be falling for the lie that abortion is merely a women's issue and men must stand down and be silent as the daily mass murder and exploitation continues?
I don't think you can really understand the general acceptance of Roe versus Wade apart from birth control pill. the birth control pill was like, waving a red flag at men. And the women, of course, waved it, or at least some of them did, not all. And so the rationality of free sex, free of any consequences from birth control, naturally reaches toward the justification of abortion, because if the birth control doesn't work on the front end, you can have abortion on the back end. So they're really bookended in terms of our historical development. Birth control and abortion go together. And, the very idea that the sexual act itself would be free from its natural meaning, its natural place in human love, in what love really means, the sharing of the self with the other. The idea that that kind of communion that was meant to glorify a male and a female together in their bond of love, just becomes a vehicle of pleasure and a vehicle of self-satisfaction. And that's why you've got all these young men on the internet now, abusing themselves and really when they get with a real woman, they don't know what to do because they spend all their sexual energy on a video screen.
Wise words with Dale Hudson here. We're going to be back with him in just a moment on his great book that he co-authored with Matt Schlapp, The Desecrators, and you can get it again at tanbooks.com. So much in this book that is so valuable and so important to get to. We're going to flesh out as much as we can here today, but there really is no substitute to getting that book yourself, tanbooks.com. And men, want to encourage you to stand up. And one way that we can do it is by gathering together for the Men's March. We're talking right now about when the next one's going to be. We had the first one in D.C. We went to Joe Biden's house at the White House. We had the last one in Baltimore. We went to the Catholic bishops. We are calling for men to repent and to do more than we've ever done before to end abortion. Let's make it illegal in law, unthinkable in culture. Go to themensmarch.com. Sign up for updates. We'll be right back on The Simple Truth. Stay tuned.
This is Franciscan Media's Saint of the Day for February 23rd. Today we celebrate Saint Polycarp. The large number of martyrs in the early church remind us of the price so many followers of Jesus paid. Today's saint is yet another example. Polycarp was a bishop in Smyrna, modern-day Turkey, and a revered Christian leader throughout Asia Minor. He was a friend of many important early churchmen, including John the Evangelist and Ignatius of Antioch. Polycarp defended the faith against numerous heresies and was chosen to discuss with the Pope the date of the Easter celebration in Rome, a controversial topic in the early church. The times for Polycarp and his fellow Christians were difficult. Living among pagans and under a government opposed to Christianity, he was especially at risk. At the age of 86, Polycarp was set upon by a crowd intent on doing away with older Christians. After refusing to deny Christ, Polycarp was brought to a stadium to be burned alive. When the flames did not harm him, he was finally killed by a dagger. The year was 156. Members of his flock collected his body and recorded the events surrounding his death. That account of Polycarp's death is the earliest and most reliable report of a Christian martyr's death. There's more about the saints along with inspiration and Catholic resources at our website, saintoftheday.org. From Franciscan Media, this has been Saint of the Day.
This is Jesse Romero, host of Jesus 911, heard weekdays at 2 p.m. Eastern. I'm joined each day by a variety of co-hosts like Ruben Nava, Paul Clay, Dan Schneider, and my amazing wife, Anita Romero. We tackle Catholic devotions, spiritual warfare, family life, saving America, and everything in between. Join us each weekday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific for Jesus 911. You can also catch a bonus encore Saturdays at noon Eastern. God bless you. Keep the faith.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Dale Hudson. He is host of Church and Culture on the Ave Maria Radio Network. He's also the co-author with Matt Schlapp of The Desecrators, Defeating the Cancel Culture Mob and Reclaiming One Nation Under God. You can get it at tanbooks.com. Well, let's go with this to what I think is a theme in this book that is one of the strongest themes as I was reading it that kept coming up in chapter after chapter. You write in chapter 1, in fact, that, quote, this book argues, well, actually, let me get to it here, make sure I have it correct. You say that this book argues that the desecrators are doing all they can to destroy respect for the church, America, and the citizen virtues that the founders considered necessary for our nation to grow and flourish, and that, quote, in a sense, virtues are more important than principles because virtues are the way principles become ingrained in individual and group character. Virtues ensure that principles will be acted upon, end of quote. So we're in a crisis of leadership in church and state, and we have been for a long time. And here's what I think there is this theme that I keep seeing coming up in the book as I was reading it. If I had to pick one virtue that is most sorely lacking in those in positions of leadership today, it would be the virtue of fortitude. Is that the one that most stands out to you, that is most lacking to you, Deal, or would you choose another virtue? What do you think is most needed in this time?
Jim, you're exactly right. You know, courage or fortitude is the disposition to do what is good in spite of danger, in spite of fear, in spite of any consequences that may deprive you of some good, whether it's bodily harm or possessions or reputation. And, you know, one thing your audience may want to think about is this, that when a movement begins to take down monuments, like they've taken down all the monuments of Father Sarah out in California, who discovered California, you know, city by city, and when a movement wants to remove names like Abraham Lincoln and George Washington, even Frederick Douglass, sadly, when they want to destroy our sense of history, think about what Christianity is, any form of Christianity, Catholic or Protestant. It's based upon history. I mean, the incarnation is a historical event. I mean, what makes Christianity the kind of religion it is, it's that God gave his son to come into history, to be historical, to be present to the world, you know, on earth for 33 years. And of course, the Catholic Church itself, and one thing that makes it stand out from Protestantism, is that the faith that Christ left in his church, which eventually became articulated in the Creed and other encyclicals and eventually the Catholic Catechism, has developed through history, through centuries. I mean, there is no stated doctrine of the Trinity in the Bible. I mean, you can find it, but it took, you know, centuries for the theologians of the patristic era to actually formulate a doctrine of the Trinity. And on and on and on. And of course, it was the church itself that chose which books of the Bible were going to be in the Bible. I mean, there were a lot of fake books, or you might say, they call them apocryphal, that were floating around, were being used by Christians at the time, but didn't get put in the Bible. Why? Because in the 3rd century, the church decided they weren't authentic. So the church has come through the centuries, it's developed the revelation of Jesus Christ, and God continues through the Holy Spirit to reveal himself to us. I mean, it's not as if there was one deposit of revelation and that's it. That revelation continues through the power of the Holy Spirit and the presence of Christ to us. And so if you try to destroy culture or destroy history, you are destroying the faith of not only Christians, but Jews and even devout Islam. So we have to say that history is central to how we live, in the sense of how we understand the meaning of human life, the trajectory of human life, how we judge the search for human happiness, and, like you say, the virtues. And when we talk about the importance of courage or fortitude, all you have to do is look back to that Christmas Eve night when George Washington was with his frozen men on one side of the Delaware River, losing the battle against the British, completely losing it, but decided on that night to cross a frozen, ice-covered river in the middle of the night and surprise the Hessian mercenaries across the river in Trenton and Princeton. That without that act of courage, which all of his generals were against, all of his officers were against, there would be no United States of America.
It's amazing. We're talking with Dale Hudson today. He is co-author of The Desecrators. You can get it at tanbooks.com. Following up on what you were just saying, Dale, going to chapter 10 in the book, which reads as follows: when we look at all the men and women who have sacrificed all for our free nation, who have sacrificed all for our free nation and continue to sacrifice, it must quiet our fears about being publicly shamed. Part of the reason we are writing this book is to help others understand that this push by the desecrators to shame us has actually caused many conservative Americans to remain silent as their country is being depicted as racist, hypocritical, and evil. We must all stop looking around with concern for what other people think of us. To be not afraid requires total indifference to those who would use your fear to silence you. Again, the need for the virtue of fortitude. I want to play a quick clip and get your response to this deal. This is Jordan Peterson back from 2018. Now, Jordan Peterson, he's not a Catholic man, but in terms of natural law principles, he seems to be a man who is on his way. So let's all continue to pray for Jordan Peterson. But here in these remarks, again, as I was reading this book, I kept thinking back to these remarks, which I had heard in the past, that I find to be very, very inspirational, motivational, but just accurate, right on, and helpful for us to speak up even when maybe there's great fear surrounding us. Here it is, Jordan Peterson from 2018.
It is not safe to speak, and it never will be. But the thing you got to keep in mind is that it's even less safe not to speak, right? It's a balance of risks. It's like you want to pay the price for being who you are and stating your mode of being in the world, or do you want to pay the price for being a bloody serf, one that's enslaved him or herself? Well, that's a major price, man. That thing unfolds over decades, and you'll just be a miserable worm at the end of about 20 years of that, right? No self-respect, no power, no ability to voice your opinions, nothing left but resentment because everyone's against you, because, of course, you've never stood up for yourself. It's like, say what you think carefully, pay attention to your words. The price it's a price you want to pay if you are willing to believe that truth is the cornerstone of society. And in the most real sense, if you're willing to take that leap, then tell the truth and see what happens. And nothing better could possibly happen to you. There'll be ups and downs, and there'll be pushback, and there'll be controversy and all of that. But it doesn't matter. The truth is what makes the world. The truth is what redeems the world from hell. And that's the truth. And we saw plenty of hell over the last 100 years, and we haven't learned a bloody thing from it. It's like, wake up, tell the truth, or at least don't lie. That's a start.
All right, that's Jordan Peterson from 2018. Dale Hudson, your response.
Well, Jim, I think I just said that. Everything he just said, I just said before he said it. But Jordan Peterson has paid the price. He's paid the price in a variety of ways. And so he is a man who can be admired for being willing to get out there and really suffer for his willingness to speak to the truth, to power. And he rose to such prominence that there was no doubt, because I've been there myself and I've suffered the same way, that they were going to find a way to take him down. But they did take him down for a while, but he's back. God bless him.
Yeah, and one of the things that I find encouraging about that, and maybe you said it in a slightly different way, and I'll have to listen back and be just as encouraged by your remarks. But what he says even earlier in that, from that clip, is he talks about the need to speak the truth. That, hey, you might not be good at it at first, you might get pushback, you might even be wrong in some ways, but that's how you're going to be shaped in your ability to speak the truth, to proclaim the truth, is by responding to that pushback, by humbly even listening to it at times if it is good correction, and where it's not, you get strong at standing up once again. In the book, you guys talk about this by saying Patrick Henry, in his famous speech to the Second Virginia Convention in 1775, he says, "Should I keep back my opinions at such a time through fear of giving offense, I should consider myself as guilty of treason toward my country, and of an act of disloyalty towards the majesty of heaven, which I revere above all earthly kings." End of quote. And you guys go on to say the lesson is obvious. It's one thing to be fearless, and quite another to be articulate and fully in command of your subject. So it's one thing to have that virtue of fortitude, but then to be articulate and fully in command of your subject. The only way you're going to learn how to do that is by doing it and facing the pushback. Any other encouragement for us on how we can become more articulate and more fully in command of the subject?
Well, it's hard to speak out on the truth if you don't know what to say. You may have some vague feelings about it. You may have some general pithy words or phrases you want to throw around. But you said earlier at the very top of the show that there are people who don't like to read. Well, that's a major problem, because if people would just go back and start reading, a few pages of the Catechism every night, read about the virtues in the Catechism, read about the relationship of faith and reason, read about what a nation is supposed to be, what the head of a nation is, first responsibility to protect the citizenry and so forth. They will begin to get arguments in their head that they can use on the spot when they encounter this total nonsense and all these lies that people are getting away with telling. So they have to spend some time re-educating themselves, remembering what they used to know, because, obviously there's a lot of things that we once knew, maybe after catechism, after RCI, after college, high school, whatever. We don't quite remember. It's vague. But to be effective, you've got to educate yourself your entire life, not just when you're young.
Mm-hmm. Yes, very well said. And I will add to that simply that I think that this book that Deal has written, co-authored with Matt Schlapp, The Desecrators, that this will prepare you to have a very good command of many subjects that need to be spoken of in your family circles, in your circle of friends, but maybe, social media, wherever you have the ability to proclaim the truth and to share some ideas with people. It is very, very powerful to do so. So I want to encourage you once again, get The Desecrators, tanbooks.com. When we get back, we're going to dive into more about, seems like there's a big backlash going on with parents finally being empowered, and much more. We've got a lot to get to, so stay tuned. We'll be right back.
This is Life News Radio. I'm Jim Anderson. The private enforcement mechanism that makes the Texas heartbeat abortion ban work may be headed to a second line of court venues. The law is already up for review at the Texas Supreme Court in lawsuits against the ban, but now attorneys for the Thomas More Law Center have filed pre-suit petitions for discovery. They, as representatives for likely plaintiffs, are seeking information from likely hostile defendants who have admitted paying for at least one abortion in violation of the law. On Monday, the Supreme Court in Bogota, Colombia, decriminalized abortion before 24 weeks gestation. President Iván Duque and most citizens were shocked, and legislators hostile to such abortion promised swift action in a referendum to the people to reverse the ruling. This is Life News Radio. Representative Vicky Hartzler has new friends in her run for the U.S. Senate from Missouri. Marilyn Musgrave of the Susan B. Anthony Candidate Fund calls Hartzler Planned Parenthood's worst nightmare. The Guttmacher Institute says that well over 200 bills just this year in nearly 40 states are seeking to restrict abortion. The chant, "My body, my choice," never really made sense to those informed of individual rights for individual bodies. Now abortion advocates are upset that people seeking rights of conscience in vaccines are using the phrase with arguably greater impact. And after President Biden's State of the Union address Tuesday, the Republican response will come from Governor Kim Reynolds of Iowa. Strongly pro-life, Governor Reynolds is already criticizing Mr. Biden over stifling free speech and free thought. Just last month, an op-ed from the governor appeared at lifenews.com, where she made the case for overturning abortion in Roe v. Wade. For pro-life headlines delivered to your email address daily, sign up at lifenews.com. This has been Life News Radio.
Welcome back to The Simple Truth. Jim Havens here on this Current Events Wednesday with our guest, Diehl Hudson, who is co-author of The Desecrators, Defeating the Cancel Culture Mob and Reclaiming One Nation Under God. It's published by Tan Books. You can get it at tanbooks.com. In Chapter 11, it reads, the 1619 and critical race theory efforts have resulted in a grassroots political revolt by parents in racially charged big cities and small-town America. Millions of parents could not believe that this hate had become formalized in their children's schools. Again, let's go to a quick clip and then get Diehl's reaction to this. This is a North Carolina dad speaking at a school board meeting last week. Here it is.
As a parent, I speak to other parents. There's a few things that we don't want. I'm biracial, I'm bilingual, I'm multicultural. The fact is, in America, in North Carolina, I can do anything I want, and I teach that to my children. And the person who tells my little pecan-colored kids that they're somehow oppressed based on the color of their skin would be absolutely wrong and absolutely at war with me. And I think that's the same for every parent. What the mask showed us is that the parents, the most powerful group of people in our country, that they're taking back the wheel. Now, obviously, we had to take the wheel back for the mask, but we're taking the wheel back from Washington all the way to Raleigh and into our local school board. Because CRT, all of that, the parents don't want it. It's a big fat lie. There's not one, if you believe in CRT, I want to tell you you're a liar, because that means you look at your black neighbor and say that they're oppressed, and you look at your white neighbor and say that they're evil, regardless of the experience that you've had with them. And we're not going to do that. The parents in the United States of America, right here in North Carolina and Cabarrus County, we know that's not true because we believe the lives we live. The fact is, I've been a business owner right here in North Carolina, and I deal with white people, black people, Hispanic people. My children deal with everybody. And the racism is only happening at the government level and on the media. The fact is, you have racists, and there's you can't even find them hardly. You just hear the stories about them. But this is what we're dealing with. The parents are taking the wheel. I have an 8-year-old daughter who is absolutely dynamic, who can do anything. Athletically, intellectually, spiritually, and emotionally, she is a dynamo. And I don't want a man swimming against her in the pool. The fact is, I don't want her playing against boys in soccer. I don't even let my sons rough her up. Do you think I'm going to let your son rough her up? This is what we're talking about. Policy going back to the parents. Because if you think people who love America are willing to fight for it, you haven't met parents yet. Because I'm telling you, parents will go further down any street than anyone who loves their country alone. My name is Brian Echeverria. I thank you for your service, and we're taking back the wheel.
Thank you. All right, Diehl Hudson, your thoughts.
I love that guy so much. I'd buy him a cigar with dinner, whatever he wants. Notice, though, how articulate he is. Notice how prepared he is. Notice, that wasn't all just off the top of his head. He had an outline in his mind, maybe even had it up, but he was ready to go. And he should be an example to everyone who has remained quiet or has fumbled around in terms of making arguments toward all the nonsense of not just CRT, but the 1619 Project. I was born in 1949. I grew up in a very segregated time in Fort Worth, Texas. my parents were, very racist in their attitudes. Although I love them, my mom's still alive. I love her. And so I myself had to grow through the whole Martin Luther King era and the tragic death of Martin Luther King. I had to grow through segregation myself and understand why I had to change. I had to change from what I was taught or what I was around, what I was exposed to. And, so I witnessed at the age of 72 what I thought was a whole entire nation, especially in the South, overcoming its prejudice, its heritage of segregation and racism and violence. And all of a sudden we find out, beginning with the Obama presidency, that, oh no, we haven't gotten very far. And now we find out from the Black Lives people, we haven't got anywhere, that we all white people are by their very skin color racist, and all black people are by their skin color oppressed. And then all the other lies that go along with it, such as the argument that the United States of America was founded by black people and that the United States Constitution itself was instituted in order to protect the institution of slavery, to protect those who wanted to keep their slaves, when, as I explained earlier, exact opposite was true. There was a compromise with a very clear understanding that the days of slavery were numbered.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and many leaders, even within the Catholic Church, have bought that false narrative by BLM and by others that, if you're white, you're inherently racist. Whether it's Bishop Seitz, who is kneeling down with BLM, or whether it's a quick clip, last clip of the day I want to play here. This is the CEO of Catholic Charities of Eastern Washington. His name is Rob McCann. He put out this message to his staff and clients in June 2020. This is an example of how some are thinking, even in positions of power in the Catholic Church. Here it is.
Watching what has unfolded and listening to the voices of the marginalized since the death of George Floyd has changed me in a way that is likely long overdue. It has made me realize some important things about my own life that maybe I always knew, but never truly embraced with enough blunt truth. I am a racist. That's the hard truth. I am a racist. How could I not be? As a white person living in America, where every institution is geared to advantage people who look like me, it's seemingly impossible for me to be anything other than a racist.
Okay, so you would think that maybe he would step down from his position, but nope, he's still in that position.
I feel sorry for him.
Right. Well,
I feel sorry for him.
And let me just make one last point, and that is that he went on to condemn the entire institution of Catholic Charities as racist, and he even was then publicly supporting BLM himself. But yeah, go ahead, Dale.
There are people who want approval. There are people who have such deep insecurity about who they are that a moment comes when they can ride a wave and be embraced for their virtue signaling. And that's what he did. I'm sure he got a lot of teary-eyed, people around him. Of course, Catholic Charities itself is not very Catholic at all. It's aligned with all kinds of pro-abortion and pro-LGBTQ groups, as my friend Michael Hitchborn has shown over the years with his institute. So it's foolishness. But, in the book, as you know, I take the bishops on very squarely, and I, Matt and I could have been a lot stronger than we were. But as I've said before, you look at Joe Biden and Nancy Pelosi, they are a product of what the American bishops have been for the last 50 years. If you want to know, the kind of Catholics they've been educating us to be, developing us to be, just look at Joe Biden. That's what they've done. He's there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it seems like maybe we had some internet issue take place here. Well, I think it's a good time to open up the phone lines. If we'll try to get Deal back in here, hopefully very quickly. But in the meantime, if you have a question or comment you'd like to bring to the show today, give a call 1-877-511-5483. That's 1-877-511-5483. Let's bring Deal back in. Deal, go ahead. We lost you, but I think you're back. Go ahead and continue your thought. Are you there?
Have you got me?
Yep, we got you now. Go ahead.
Have you got me? Where did you lose me there? Yeah. I'm not sure. Did you hear what I said about Biden?
Yes, we were beginning to hear that. I think that's where we lost you.
Well, I just said that he's an example of what the bishops have done to the Catholics in this country. He's an example of the kind of leadership they have not shown. Pelosi too. In fact, they've made this devil's bargain with Democrats starting 30 years ago.
Yeah, I think we're still having a little bit of internet issue, but hopefully we'll get that fixed. And I want to bring in this idea based on what Deal is saying right there. It's a great way to say it, very clear, very pithy, is that Joe Biden is the creation of the Catholic bishops. This is the type of Catholic that has been formed with all the nonsense that has been taught and all of the clear teaching that hasn't been put forth. They've been silent on various things that they ought to be proclaiming, and they've been proclaiming various things they ought not to be proclaiming. And this is the reaction that we get, the response that we get. We get Catholics that are pro-abortion, even radically pro-abortion. And this is commonplace within the Catholic Church, sadly. And so one of the reasons why we do this show, and one of the reasons I think why Deal and others put out great books like The Desecrators, you can get it at tanbooks.com, is because we want to encourage one another. For those who can see through the madness, right? If you're a Catholic who is well-formed, you believe the faith, you understand what is right and wrong, you can see what's happening, and you're saddened by it, but then we got to do something about it. We got to have some response to this. We cannot just allow this all to keep continuing while we're silent and while we're inactive. So many people say, well, what can we do? Well, certainly we ought to be praying, right? We have a prayer life. So certainly we're praying about these important things every day in our prayers of intercession. But we've got to do more than prayer. And if we are sincerely praying, I think that does activate something in us to do more in terms of action. Now, there's a great bit in this book on political engagement as the moral duty of all Americans. And Deal and Matt, they cite passages from the Catechism on the political responsibility that every Catholic has. We need to hear this and stop making excuses about what our call is. We've got to step up in the political realm, right? This is the call of the laity in particular. And so again, this is an area that, people will slander you and say, oh, how dare you if you register Republican because you want to vote in the primary. If you get involved in your local county committee, you become a committee member, start knocking on doors, trying to help out. There'll be some in the church that will say, oh, you're getting too political. No, we better get more political if we want a nation that is going to continue to be faithful to the founding principles that we have. Go ahead, Deal.
What is political about supporting candidates who want to either just limit abortions or do away with them altogether? What is political about opposing completely pro-abortion candidates like Hillary Clinton and Joe Biden? They want to call that political. Sure, it's political, but it's exactly the kind of politics Catholics should be doing. And you believe me, I've been on the ground involved in presidential campaigns over and over, and I can tell you that most bishops, except for a handful, did nothing but throw down roadblocks to me and my Catholic outreach when I was working on behalf of pro-life presidential candidates. So what happens the moment Biden gets elected? He gets wined and dined by Wilton Gregory in D.C. One or two bishops, good guys, speak out and say we got a problem. But has there been a wave of bishop comment about Biden and Pelosi? No, there has not. In fact, Bishop Strickland of Tyler, who has spoken out, got leaned on by the bishops at the bishops' conference in November about his very very forthright comments. No, if the Catholics should do something, they begin with challenging their bishops and their priests right to their face.
Yeah, well said, Diehl Hudson. He lays it all out well with Matt Schlapp in this book, The Desecrators. You can get it at tanbooks.com. We're going to be back with more. In particular, want to get a little bit more, flesh out Diehl's thoughts even a little bit further in this area, specifically this idea that politics are downstream from culture. Sometimes people use that as an excuse to be inactive. What about his outreach, his Catholic outreach with then Governor George W. Bush? We're going to get into that a little bit and much more when we get back here on The Simple Truth with Diehl Hudson and his book, The Desecrators, tanbooks.com. We'll be right back.
You can listen to any of our network-produced programs at your convenience, wherever you enjoy podcasts. Hear a powerful sermon you need to share with a loved one? Maybe there's a guest or teaching segment that deserves another listen. You can find all of our shows on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, Spotify, Google Podcasts, our website, and the free iCatholic Radio app. Be uplifted in your faith. Listen today at thestationofthecross.com or on your favorite podcasting platform.
As a nonprofit lay organization financially independent from your diocese, our apostolate is listener-supported. Through your generosity, we are able to inspire countless listeners with the gospel message and help lead them to a parish to be spiritually nourished by the sacraments. The Station of the Cross thanks our supporters who have enabled us to broadcast Catholic programs for more than 20 years. Thank you for your continued support, and may God bless you and your family.
Hello, this is Father Frank Pavone of Priests for Life. Advocates of abortion use the words freedom of choice, yet Scripture makes clear the real meaning of freedom. In Exodus, God says, "Let my people go, that they may serve me." Freedom has a content. It is not whatever we want to do. It is a road to serve the Lord, meaning there are some things we always choose and some things we always reject. This is Father Frank Pavone, National Director of Priests for Life.
Do you love listening to the Station of the Cross on your car radio, but sometimes find yourself driving outside the listening area? Never miss another minute of your favorite show. Download the iCatholic Radio app so you can listen anywhere in the world 24 hours a day. The iCatholic Radio app is available for your phone in the Apple Store or for your Android phone in Google Play. Visit thestationofthecross.com for more information.
Simple Truth. Jim Havens here with our guest today, Diehl Hudson. We are talking about his book, The Desecrators, Defeating the Cancel Culture Mob and Reclaiming One Nation Under God. Get it at tanbooks.com. Again, there's so much in this book. We're only barely scratching the surface today. Go ahead to tanbooks.com and get this book, The Desecrators. Diehl, if you want to follow up on your last comments, what more can we do concretely to really get involved?
I have a chapter in the book about the importance of our side using symbols. We saw how effectively Black Lives Matter used their symbols during their little uprising there in D.C. and other places. But what would happen if the 75 million people who voted for Donald Trump were to put an American flag in their yard on the same day? What kind of impact would that have? What would happen if all the pro-life Catholics in the country put a crucifix or some symbol of pro-life in their front yard or on the lapel on the same day? What you would get is you would have the people of this nation would realize that the bad guys are not in the majority. They would realize that these elites on TV that act like they're representing, quote unquote, the American people but they're lying to you. They represent a very small minority of people who never talk to people like us, who never listen to people like us. Why? They don't want to be challenged. But if we could get out there with public symbols of our beliefs and our convictions, I think it would wake up a lot of people and give them courage to speak themselves. I mean, they could begin speaking by putting a flag in their yard or putting a crucifix on their lapel. That's a way of beginning to speak, Jim.
Yeah. You know what? I want to throw out. I have a lot of notes here, a lot of directions I'd like to go, but you know what? I want to throw it all out the window and get to one question, and that is this. First, I want to thank you for your involvement in the campaigns of George W. Bush, in particular back in 2004. I don't know if it was part of your initiative or not, but I remember I was a student in Steubenville, Ohio at Franciscan University, and it was the weekend before the election day, and we got out there with tons of little leaflets that basically they were so well done. I've never seen anything so well done since. It just laid out all the life issues and showed where the two candidates were, and that it wasn't even a contest, right? And we went out and we put them. We went into church parking lots all throughout Ohio there and put them all over the windshields. I do remember the only blowback we got was at one, I think, Catholic parish where they came out and tried to get us off their property, but we left them all up there. But I think that was a very, very important outreach. But I want to ask you, as one who has been on the inside in these political affairs, what is the calculation that goes on within a campaign surrounding a political candidate, especially one as high profile as a presidential candidate, in terms of how much they're willing to push when it comes to protecting the preborn from abortion? Is it only they just have to be better than the other guy? Or, is there any calculation that, the right thing to do on principle is personhood? We've got to go all the way. We haven't seen that over time. Maybe now there's becoming a little bit more of an appetite or a little bit more pushback for that. But what is that calculation? Have you seen anything you can share with us?
It's not that calculated. What George W. Bush, and when Karl Rove called me, he called me because of a couple of papers I had published in Crisis talking about the importance of the Catholic vote and how to get the Catholic vote to vote conservative, Republican if necessary. And what we found was that no political party had ever gone after Catholics who were regular Mass attenders. It was the regular Mass attenders who really constitute the Catholic vote. So what I did in both 2000 and 2004 was led an effort called Catholic Outreach, where we got the message of George W. Bush to Catholics who are Mass attenders. We used EWTN quite a bit, thanks to Raymond Arroyo and Mother Angelica. We also used all the Catholic magazines and the radios that then existed, and we flooded the areas of communication where we would find Mass attending Catholics. And so when Martin Gillespie came out to Steubenville that day, because he was running my ground campaign for me in 2004, that was an example of we did all over the country for months before the 2004 election. We were going to places where we knew the Catholics there would want to support the effort of George W. Bush to save lives. Now, in the case of Donald Trump, because I started that Catholic outreach as well, that was a hard sell. People didn't believe it. I had good friends in the Catholic world who just didn't believe me. And I had others who did. And who would figure he becomes the most pro-life president in the history of American politics?
Mm-hmm. Yes, and anything else you want to share with us? You do such a great job in the book outlining what has taken place with respect to the last couple presidential elections and how the bishops have responded, how they haven't responded, particularly with various voter guides and their documents that they put out. And I think one point that you make very, very well, it's a point we've made on this show many times, but I'd love you to flesh it out and anything else you'd like to say on it, is this difference between an intrinsic inherent evil like abortion. There's no room for debate. This is murdering innocent human beings, children, right? Versus prudential judgments like immigration and various other issues where we can say, hold on, let's take a look at this. What's the policy we're debating here? And you can have different sides of this, but not when it comes to murdering children. Anything further you can explain for us?
Everything the bishops have done since I've been involved in presidential politics, every document, and it's gone through the priest, has been to blur the line between prudential judgments about with Catholics can differ. They'll begin with the same basic principles, but they can differ on how to approach the problem. Versus the five non-negotiables, including abortion, euthanasia, and so forth. And the bishops have done everything they can to blur that distinction, and they've done everything they can to keep abortion from being a rallying cry for Catholic voters. I've run into it face to face, as have people like Martin Gillespie that I worked with and so forth. They will even write up their voter guides in a way that equate the importance of a politician's stance on abortion with their stance on immigration, or even their stance on internet accessibility. It's really ridiculous. So I'm not exaggerating. With the exception of maybe 5 or 6, maybe 7 bishops, all the bishops in this country are culpable for what we see in Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi, and what we see among the Catholic populace in continuing to vote, helping to vote these people into office. All of the church-going Catholics vote in a majority for pro-life candidates. Catholics in general who just identify themselves as Catholic vote for the pro-abortion party and for the pro-abortion politicians. So that's really the story in miniature. Just look at those that go to Mass versus those who don't, and look at the fact that bishops have done everything they can and that's why they invented this thing of one-issue politics. But to care about life, Jim, is to care about everything. It's the foundation.
Yes, it's the core. And you do a great job putting it all together in this book, The Desecrators. Again, everybody go get this book, tanbooks.com. And again, that what you did in 2004 with those leaflets, that is why that is so effective, because that's the exact segment you want to reach, the mass goers, the ones that are actually going to church, and you're just laying out for them where the candidates are on life issues. You're making it clear for them, then they are free to make their decision, and then they're very likely to vote the right way with respect to that. Dale Hudson, great blessing to have you on today. Thank you for all of your good work.
Jim, thank you. Thank you, Jim.
All right. Again, the book is The Desecrators. You can get it at tanbooks.com, tanbooks.com. If you have any comment for me, feel free to shoot me an email, jimh@thestationofthecross.com. God bless you.